Timbannya. So, good morning. Good morning to all.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm seeing some familiar faces. I hope you're all well today. I think we can start the session. We'll make some introductions, and in the meantime, some other people might be joining us as well. Are you hearing me well?
Yes, very clear, Josiane.
Oh, very good. A question asked during these. So thank you all for being here, first of all. As you are aware, we will be conducting this session on job seekers' behaviors and expectations. Of course, I will explain further as we go along. This will be a 1-hour session. We'll try to keep it as focused as possible. There's a lot of information, but of course, we'll allow some time in the end also for questions. But throughout the presentation, if you feel that you need to comment or ask any questions, let's try to use the chat. In the bottom, there's a chat option. Odessa, the name is MISCO Malta. So when you speak to MISCO Malta, Odessa will be administering the chat and will let us know that there are some questions to be asked. We'll see if we can discuss them throughout the session or maybe later on during the presentation. I'll be holding this session in English. If you need to comment in Maltese or if you feel more comfortable in Maltese, please do go ahead. Just to make some introductions, I will be presenting this session together with, so my name is Josiane Avellino. I'm a manager here at MISCO, and I had the selection and recruitment unit. And I will be presenting this session together with my colleague Nadine Cilia.
Good morning, everyone.
Who will be presenting the second part of the presentation as well. So you'll hear from Nadine later on as well. So I think we can start. So just to give you an idea of this presentation, we'll be going through the objectives, of course, and some demographics so that you can understand whom we have conducted this research with. And then we'll be presenting the findings in relation to trends and preferences that candidates show when searching for jobs throughout the job market. Just to make it clear, basically we conducted this research, let's call them candidates. However, it doesn't mean that they are unemployed people or that necessarily they're searching for a job. We wanted to open this up to all those individuals, even people who aren't working, who are working, who at some point in their life might have searched or will be searching for a job, to see their comments, their preferences on this aspect. So this research was conducted in June this year. We've been conducting this job. We did conduct this in the past, but we've been using these similar questions since 2014. So every year we were compiling different data to see the differences that were presented in the market. And it's very interesting to see that certain aspects remain constant throughout, even if the years pass, certain aspects remain there and we'll see them. Others change gradually, the trends change gradually. And then we've seen, COVID as a phenomenon has affected some things that changed drastically, due to the pandemic, for example. So certain spikes in our lifetime that create certain changes in the way we see things in the job market. So we'll be seeing those aspects throughout this presentation. So let's start with some demographics so that I give you an idea of how the candidate, I'm calling them candidates, they're general people in any market. So let's go to some demographics. So we did this research with 434 people, which is a good number that represents the market. 56% were male and 44% were female. These percentages remained quite constant throughout the years since 2014. So there were very few changes in this. And we did this through 9 economic sectors, which we will go through soon so that you are aware which sectors were present in this research. Just a little bit on the level of education, it was quite balanced. As you can see, the majority do fall from level 7 and higher. So most of the respondents had a master's degree or higher. However, a very good chunk falls within the level 4 and 5, which refers to A levels, diploma levels, intermediate levels, and the level 6, which is the degree. Then there was a 16%, which is the lower percentage, but still a relevant number, that were people who had level 3 or lower, so even school leavers, those who stopped at primary school, those who did up to O levels, what we know as O levels. When it comes to the level of employment, again, we can see a balance, but mostly, as you can see, for people in clerical work, which shows the 12% figure, client-facing people, executive, senior management, and the highest percentage, which is 24%, shows that middle management people. However, we can also see very few entry-level people, some skilled and some skilled manual work people as well, but very few in that aspect. Some indication of the economic sector. Again, here we didn't choose the economic sector, but the people that conducted this research worked in these particular areas. So we can see, for example, the highest percentage being there's the wholesale, retail, transportation, and accommodation, a big chunk in professional services and financial services. Then there's public administration, manufacturing. So it's across all the sectors in Malta, as you can see, and this gave us a very good indication of how different sectors were affected during this year, what changes were predominant, and so on. Here we ask this question to the candidates and to see where do candidates see themselves, where did they see themselves in June this year. A very big number, if you can see the first pie chart, 20% shows themselves being unemployed and actively seeking work. And I'm focusing on this figure because last year, in 2019, we conducted this research in 2019, and similarly, I think it was June as well, May, June. And this figure at the time was 9%. So there is a very much increase in that percentage. Of course, it could be, I mean, COVID must have had an impact on this figure as well, but it's quite a big figure. Then other areas, for example, employed but not seeking opportunities, there's a big chunk of 41%, which is a good number. But then there are the people who are employed but still would be interested in moving, which is 27%. And employed and not seeking 12%. Sorry, the 41%, they would be open to see opportunities. It's 12% that they're employed and definitely not moving. When asked on how optimistic people are during this year, of course, when it comes to job opportunities, the majority chose that there are few opportunities available. Now, what's interesting here, when comparing this research to 2019, in 2019, 57% chose that there are no opportunities. Now, a reason for this could be that during 2019, we felt that people were very passive in the sense that they were okay in their jobs, and unless you prompted them, they might not have been searching actively for a job. So maybe they saw that there were no opportunities available for that reason. This year, some companies, due to maybe there was some instability, so people were on the lookout, even if some candidates would say, I'm not moving because I'm not sure where it will take me, what will happen this year. Some people still checked what opportunities are there, just as, as a backup plan maybe. And maybe that's why people chose that there are few opportunities, because people are seeing what's available, are trying to check what roles are available in the market. Then 14% said that there are no opportunities available, whilst 22% mentioned that there are several opportunities in the current market. Okay, and so that gives us an idea of the type of people who replied to this particular research. So now we're going to pass on to trends. What trends are we seeing in the current market? So when we asked candidates how often they changed jobs, and these particular figures remained quite constant throughout the years. The majority of people tend to start searching for a new role between the third and fifth year of their employment, which forms 26% of the 430 that replied. Then there are still big chunks. For example, from the 6 to 10 years, it's 20%, which is still a high figure that change jobs in that year, and the 19% more than 10 years, so that have been employed for over 10 years. I think they're quite interesting figures. So in reality, the amount of people who change jobs between the first and second year would be the 23% plus the 2%. So it's 25% of the respondents, which is, 1/4 of the, I'm saying, the population, of course, through the research that we did. And 10% never change jobs, which again is quite an interesting number. We were also interested in getting to know why. Why do people start searching for a job? Which of course is what interests us as employers to retain our employees. And also when we're searching for people, what are the attraction points that we can put forward to attract people to us? And basically, of course, this research, first of all, it's interesting because you get to know what people are expecting. But when doing it, we also keep in mind, what figures shall I take to use them to my advantage, either to retain people or to attract people to me. So these numbers are very important for that reason as well. Now, in this case, people chose that they would start looking for a job mostly for better salary and personal advancement. Now this, again, it did remain constant throughout the years. Later on, I think Nadine will be mentioning this later on, so I won't focus so much on it. There are other areas as well that affect why people stay within the company. But let's leave that to Nadine. So for now, we've seen that people might move for a better salary to advance further in their career because maybe they're not finding them in their current job. 8% chose company culture. So maybe they would not feel that they're fitting in the current company and therefore start searching for other opportunities. Flexible working hours. Now this is interesting as well. In 2019, this figure was 17%. So 17% of the candidates in 2019 chose that they would start looking for a job to seek flexible working hours. It might have had this effect because due to COVID, many people started working certain flexible hours, working from home. So we've seen the transition in companies that would have never dreamed, for example, of having a working from home option. But due to this pandemic, things had to change. So this figure now decreased. So in June, people didn't choose it as a priority to search for flexible hours. It might be the reason that they already have it in their current role, so people are expecting it. We'll need to see how things will evolve. And then there's the lack of stability, finding work which is not challenging enough, management style that might affect them to search for other jobs. And then there were other areas as well, such as the working environment they're not happy with, so they want to change for that reason. Lack of work, again, COVID might have affected this figure as well. To be able to work from home, and internal conflict, which made them seek the next step in their career. Okay, a little bit about COVID. We cannot not mention it. It's a part of our daily lives. I must say it's something we cannot avoid. If we look at these figures, again, they're interesting. 42% said that COVID did not have any impact on their job, which is quite a big chunk. And 21% mentioned that they were even busier during COVID times. Now, we need to appreciate that this can also mean that it might be a perception as well, in the sense we were discussing this as well with the team, and certain things, for example, even roles related to sales, let's say, during COVID, due to the situation and due to the impact it had, people might had the perception that they're working more because they need to attract more people, there were certain things that changed in the way we do things. So, okay, certain sectors might have, yes, been busier than others due to for example, we've seen a lot of delivery people running around Malta, and that increased a lot automatically. But certain other areas, such as salespeople, would have given much more effort in their role to be able to reach certain targets during this year due to how things turned out. 37% were impacted negatively. 21% were made, out of the 37, were made redundant, whilst 16% worked less hours. So there was an impact. We cannot say that there wasn't, but at the same time, the 42% and 21% showing that they weren't impacted in their jobs. Again, we had certain sectors, as you know, were more affected than others. So certain jobs and certain areas of employment had more impact than others in the general market. Okay, moving on to the medium candidates use, and this is interesting, so that when we are, for example, advertising our roles, when we're sharing new opportunities from the company, you'll say, which mediums should I use? Again, these did remain constant throughout the years. 74%, which is the biggest chunk, prefer to apply by email, whilst 13% prefer to apply to the company website. Here, even, for example, LinkedIn is at a good rate as well. What's interesting here is that from MISCO, when it comes to MISCO, for example, we do use LinkedIn and Facebook, for example, apart from other social media, to advertise jobs. And we do receive a good chunk of applications to these mediums. However, this shows that it's not the preferred method. So although we do receive applications to other sources, email still remains the best option. So if possible, when advertising a job, or have the possibility for people to send a CV by email, because as you can see, it's the preferred option, and you might receive more applications with that method. But then again, there are other areas as well. So LinkedIn, word of mouth, post, of course, has reduced drastically. So that's at the bottom of the list. Telephone as well. Facebook as well, funnily enough, it's only 1%. It remained constant from last year. Shows that Facebook applications are the preferred method, only 1%. It might be the case that those of you who have used Facebook, a lot of applications are received through Facebook, and maybe people feel that the communication thereon might not be as effective as email. It comes natural. Email, I don't know about you, but it comes natural that emails, you need to reply to an email. If an email comes to your inbox, it needs to be actioned. unfortunately, through Facebook, due to the number of applications received, not everyone is taking care of replying to the candidates, and it must have an effect on the preference in choosing that particular medium. Okay, so we asked about time and days preferred to search for a job. It's quite balanced out. In fact, the majority, 43%, chose any time during the day. So it doesn't really affect when they're searching for a job. But interestingly enough, 31%, which is a high figure, choose to search for a job during office hours. And Monday showed the highest ranking. So, after the weekend, people go to work on Monday and say, I'm fed up, I need a new job. So if we're advertising a job or anything, maybe Monday might be an option to attract more candidates. However, people would be searching throughout the day in general. And 35%, in fact, chose after work as well. So 31 in reality is the lowest number, but it's still a big chunk considering everything. Okay, I will be passing on to Nadine, who will now be presenting the next part of the presentation on job preferences. I don't know if you have any questions, of course, on the first part, feel free to leave us a comment and we'll discuss it as well.
Thank you, Josiane. I believe you're seeing my screen now. Very good. So we're going to go into a bit more detail on job seeker preferences. One of the questions we asked is that how many interviews does a candidate expect to have in order to be able to be offered a role? As you can see, the majority of the respondents have asked that they would prefer at least 2 interviews, whilst the others prefer, so 19% prefer at least 3 interviews, so it's quite a low number, and 14% feel that 1 interview would be enough for them to get an offer on the job. Something which we realized here is that 11% of the 14% who responded are actually come from the public administration, health, social work areas. So it seems that the majority of people who feel that the 1 interview is enough come from these particular sectors. And then we have 9% who really did not express any opinions on this. This has been quite recurring over the surveys we've been doing along the years, and here 63% of the respondents stated that they have started a new job without getting a proper induction. In 2019, it was 67%. So it's still quite a high number. So it seems that when candidates are introduced to a new job, they feel the need to have a proper induction. So obviously, as employers and of you who come from maybe a human resources function, it's important to take note of this, because it seems that candidates are really looking to have a good induction on their first days, weeks in a new company. Here we asked, from where did the respondents source their best job? So practically this is throughout their career. The highest percentage is actually through personal connections, so word of mouth. Right after that is through recruitment companies. And we can see here that newspaper is still being mentioned. It's actually although maybe we don't really look at newspapers today as, you know, the go-to place or the go-to medium to look for jobs, we can still say that 12% of the respondents have found their best job through a newspaper. From a personal perspective, I myself 5 years ago found found MISCO through the newspaper. So it's still quite being mentioned, you know, as a probable as a medium to be used when looking when sourcing a job. What we did after this is that we looked in particularly as to the top 4 sources candidates use when looking for job opportunities. So this is obviously good for companies who have roles at the moment, because we need to see where we're going to put and advertise these roles. Practically 72% prefer going through recruitment companies. And this has been evident practically along the years. It was same in 2019, and I particularly went back to 5 years ago on this, just to make a bit of a difference. And recruitment companies was still the top source in looking for a job. After that, we have LinkedIn. 50% of the respondents mentioned that they would go for LinkedIn. Then we have online job boards and the website. Something to, you know, mention here is that the recruitment companies as well as company website has been quite constant along the years. So it seems that candidates seem to always go to these types of sources when looking for a job. The difference was that 5 years ago, the second top source was the newspaper, and the fourth was the personal connections. So we can also sort of see a bit of similarities of, you know, where the candidates feel they found their best job, as opposed to where they are currently looking, you know, at the moment. This also shows that most of the candidates are not really proactive in looking for jobs. So they might wait for a recruitment company to call them up and let them know that there is a role available which might interest them. For LinkedIn, you know, that where sponsored adverts and positions pop up on the feed. Having job boards, you know, sending emails with career opportunities which might interest them. So it seems that career opportunities need to be made available and need to be made evidently available for the candidates to push them to apply. Here we asked what is considered important for a candidate in a job application process. As you can see, there are quite difference in percentages here. One which came across also to what Josiane mentioned earlier is the 68% who prefer to apply for positions by email. So this is recurring. Something to take note of is the 61% who mentioned that in order for them to be able to apply for a job, they would feel more comfortable having a recruiter or a contact person to speak with prior to actually applying. This is something which, you know, we should take into consideration. So if we have, for example, a job advert out there, it's good to put contact details. So if a person is interested in asking questions, getting more information, or maybe discussing further on the role, it's good for them to have a contact person to do so, whether it's HR, the hiring manager of the role, so someone who would be able to give them, more details on this. Something to look at here as well is the sort of link, I would say, between the 36% who would prefer to apply for a job without having to register on a company website, and the 25% who would like to be able to apply for a job using their LinkedIn profile. Again, here we're looking at convenience, we're looking for having a job application process which is as comfortable and as efficient as possible. So having an application through LinkedIn means that the person doesn't really need to work on their CV, doesn't really need to prepare maybe or go through a registration process on a website. So again, we're all the time here looking at convenience more than anything. So this, we found here that there might be a bit of a link, something to which is quite interesting is the 21% having a mobile application to search and apply for jobs. We also took we took a look back on the other job trend surveys we did, and this is all the time increasing. In 2015, we were looking at 7.5%. Last year, it was 14%, and in 2020, now it's 21%. So as we can see, this has been increasing along the years. So a company which has a mobile application to be able to search and apply for a job, again, it promotes comfort and convenience for the candidate to be able to do that as efficiently as possible. So we look at company values. When it comes to company values, obviously we asked which company values appear most when candidates are looking for a job, and they were asked to choose the top two preferences. From what we could see, even looking at past data, is that it remained quite constant in that employee orientation and recognition, as well as employee development and enhancement, have always been the top two in terms of company values. After that would be stability, and then comes the monetary gain. So then comes the salary, etc. What we realized this year is that customer focus, so the one before last, seemed to have increased a bit from what we've seen last year. There could be a number of reasons here. Maybe one of the reasons for doing so is that maybe due to COVID and due to the impact it had on certain companies, one of the main company values now must be customer focus in order to be able to attract as many customers as possible, and obviously being able to operate better. So it could have been one of the factors in which candidates would be looking for a customer focused company. It's interesting to see as well that, as Josiane mentioned before, one of the main reasons why a person would look for a job is a better salary. And here it's actually it's the fourth preference from our table here. It seems that although a candidate when looking for a job, a candidate would leave for a higher salary, it could mean that because the first three preferences are missing from their current company. So the next best thing would be to leave for to look for a better salary. And this is something which we'll see later on as to the reasons why a person would decide to stay in a company versus why they would, what factors they look at when looking for a job. So here we're looking at what message would attract candidates to apply to a company. They were able to choose multiple respondents. So what attracts a candidate to a company? And as we can see here, the company values is the highest. So it seems that, you know, very in terms of company values, it seems that it's quite important when a person is looking to change from one company to another. After that, it's at the professional outlook. So we're looking at 45% who would look at how professional the company is. And then quite less, but still top three would be their PR about benefits, events the company organizes, etc. What comes across here is what we call the employer brand. So all of these will show through the company's employer brand and how it is communicated out there. So how people out there are looking and perceiving the company we work for. Tying as well with the employer brand is obviously company promotions. What we asked is that, do you think that company promotions give prospective employees an accurate image of the work environment of a company? And here we could see that 42% agree that what is being promoted by the company is what it is. It's actually what the company is promoting. However, 58%, so the 35 plus the 23, are not sure or maybe disagree than what is promoted by a company is actually true. As we said, this goes back to the employer brand. So we need to make sure that the candidates and employees visiting and employed with our company are communicating how the company really is. So we cannot have a promotion saying one thing when in fact our company is doing something completely different. These need to be as balanced and as accurate as possible, because although it's not one of the highest ways on how to look for a job, personal connections and word of mouth is still quite strong. And even the fact that people, when looking for a job, would need to contact the company before actually applying. So it's sort of like they need the extra reassurance that what they're seeing and what is being promoted to them is actually true. We also asked the candidates what type of company they would prefer to work for. And what we can see here is that it's you know, the majority, I would say, is foreign owned or a local company. And they would mostly prefer small to medium-sized companies and established companies. The startup concept is still being considered as a bit of a risk. So maybe that's why it's quite on the low side. Obviously, it's not for everyone, because you also obviously have candidates who would prefer to go to a startup company because they are attracted to that type of company as well. So this is mostly what type of company the candidates prefer to work for. We also looked at employment preferences. So if a person had to search for a job, which of the options above would you go for? So which would attract the most? What we added this year is the last two. So having to work from an office, or a mix between working from home and from the office as well. So these were added just this year, and that's why we cannot see the comparison with last year. We can see some differences here. For example, when it comes to temporary employment and freelance, this year they are a bit on the lower side. Again, we could think that it's could be COVID related, because of the fact that now that people are looking for a job, they are looking for a role which is more stable. We do get a number of candidates as well who might be working freelance at the moment and come to us saying that, you know, we're looking to be employed with a company because it feels that they give them more stability. So here, actually, it's interesting to see that, you know, 60% would really like to have a job which has, you know, a mix of both. So having the chance to work from an office as well as working from home. And this could have been brought about by the COVID situation, because as Josiane mentioned earlier, companies which maybe did not really think about having the option of working from home, nowadays it's one of the main options. Psychometric assessments, we asked, have you ever been asked to conduct a psychometric assessment or a skills test at an interview stage? And what we could see also throughout the years is that these are becoming even more popular. So this year, 47% said that, yes, they have asked to do some sort of skills test or psychometric assessment. As opposed to maybe, you know, 2015, which was quite less. So it seems that companies also are realizing that it is adding value to, you know, the recruitment process, and it's becoming used and throughout a recruitment process. We've even seen companies who have introduced it as part of a recruitment process, whether it's a skills test or a psychometric assessment. So they sort of introduced it as part of the recruitment process for the company. We asked the candidates about having to wait over 20 minutes in a waiting area before being called for an interview. 81% said yes. So they have actually waited over 20 minutes before being called in. Again, this is something we need to look at. 81% is quite a high number, and it's something which we've been seeing along the years as well. So I think we all know that time sometimes runs past us. We can't even keep up with time, but obviously it affects the candidates, because obviously having to wait for 20 minutes before being called in for an interview is quite a long time to wait. We need to take into consideration that the candidates might be there maybe during a break, or having to have like an hour of leave to be able to make it for an interview. And also, again, part of, you know, the employer brand and how we are being perceived out there. Having to go for an interview and having to wait so long might not come across as positive as being able to go into an interview on time. We asked as well about the interview preference. Obviously, now we're seeing a lot of remote interviews being done. So we asked about whether they would prefer an in-person interview or an online interview. And surprisingly, 83% of the respondents have mentioned that they would still prefer, an in-person interview. So it seems that they would still have a clearer picture because they're going to the company, they're seeing the environment, they're meeting with the people face to face. And actually 41% mentioned that they feel more comfortable in a face-to-face interview. Whilst obviously 17% said they would prefer online interview because, long story short, it's more convenient. So as we said, candidates look for convenience as much as possible, but this is quite interesting. So it's good to know that we haven't lost the personal touch completely. So it's good to consider if hopefully, very soon we'll go back to having face-to-face interviews. It's good to consider because candidates seem to like it more. So this is what I referred to earlier. So this is practically what makes a candidate stay in a current position versus what makes them accept a new offer. So what we could see here is that why a candidate chooses to stay in the current role, there is a balance between right values and culture, which is 24%, and a better salary package, which is 29%. So it seems that if the person has, a good package and they feel that the company has the right values and culture, which fits into their personality, they are more likely to stay in the current position. When, on the other hand, if the values and culture is not there, they probably move for a better salary. So obviously, when looking at what makes them move to a new company, it's very difficult to go into values and culture because they would really need to experience the company before knowing the right values and culture of the company. So we could understand that one of the main reasons of moving at that point would be a salary. But from the other side, it seems that if there is, the right salary, values and culture, then the salary is not that of an important factor. So there seems to be a bit of a balance here. Sorry, couldn't move to the next slide. So what we asked is that which of the following perks do you feel are important for you when you are presented with a job offer? I would say that obviously here, as you can see, the top two are flexible hours and medical insurance, followed by parking and the possibility of working from home. So, flexible hours seems to be coming up a lot. Obviously, with the COVID situation, it seems that there was a lot of flexibility and obviously the option of working from home as well. So it seems now that in looking for other jobs and getting job offers, it seems that these are the criteria they'll be looking at. Mostly insurance is quite a high percentage here as well. When it comes to dress code, it's mentioned there's 29%, but maybe not as important as obviously the other four perks mentioned here. Excuse me. Okay. So what we did here is that obviously we've asked these three questions, and it's very interesting to see the similarities between last year and this year, and it seems to be coming up year after year. The first question is, what are the main challenges you find when searching for a job? This year, 15% mentioned that there's lack of interesting opportunities. Similarly, last year, 15% said that the requirements do not match. So practically, we're seeing a bit of similarities here when they're looking at challenges on actually looking and applying for a job. The next order, it's quite interesting because we did mention this earlier in terms of information, lack of information, needing more information, having details, etc. In terms of dislikes in a job process, something which is reoccurring is lack of information or maybe wrong information. And obviously reflected as well is what can be improved in the next question, what can be improved. So would they suggest to companies looking for employees is giving more information. So this seems to be a recurring factor for candidates looking for a job. In fact, we seen before that one of the main factors, 61% said that they would prefer to speak with a contact person before applying for a job. So obviously this ties into, could it be that as companies we're not giving the right information? Are we giving enough information to be able to attract candidates to apply with our company? So this is something we need to look at when issuing job adverts, for example. Are we giving the right information? Do we have enough information? Do we have enough details in order to attract people to apply for our jobs? Obviously something to consider especially when issuing job adverts for your roles. Any questions, queries, anything you'd like to discuss? Odessa, I don't know if we have any questions on the chat. Sorry, I wasn't following the chat.
It's okay. If anyone has any questions, feel free to write them in the chat now, or even comments. Feel free to share them.
Even before we leave, maybe okay, we're concluding this presentation here, so that anyone who wishes to leave can leave as well. But of course, anyone who wishes to discuss, feel free to do so. We will be sending the presentation by email to all of you, so that you can see the results there and the feedback there. We'll also include a link, and basically we're doing the next hot seat on HR trends in Malta, and we'll be sharing a link with you so that you can participate in that particular survey as well. We'll include it in the email though. So thank you all for coming to this hot seat, and we hope you found it useful, and feel free to share with us any comments or questions you might have.
Actually, we do have a question, Josie, and I can see Francesca asked about the tourism industry, tourism sector, if it was included in the sectors. What I can tell you, Francesca, is that there was accommodation in one of the sectors. So it was accommodation and food services activities. And then we had another option of other services. So if just in case the person didn't include their sector in that particular sector, they could have chosen other services.
So as exactly, in reality, it was open to all, so anyone could reply to the survey. I'm seeing another question in relation to if people use Jobs Plus to find their employment, was this included under the private recruitment agencies? In reality, we gave the options, the economic sectors, we gave those particular areas. So people could choose where it fits best. So yes, I would say that it might have included private recruitment, or it might have been under the public administration as well when it comes to Jobs Plus. So in reality, it will depend on where the candidates, the people responding to the survey, where they felt they could put it in the economic sector, but there might have been different responses to that.
In addition to that, I had another question where I was asked for a clarification of what employee orientation and recognition means. This was referred to under, if I'm not mistaken, it was under the company values. Basically, employee orientation is when you introduce the employees to the rest of the teams. And recognition is when you recognize your employees for an effort they did or anything they did within the company, basically.
I'm not seeing other questions. Of course, you know where to find us. So if you feel you wish to discuss any elements one-to-one or anything, feel free to contact us. So we would like to thank you all for your time and hope you found this useful and use it, of course, as a way to attract people and retain people in your companies as well.
Thank you everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Just one last comment, because I've been getting some questions about this. We will be sharing the presentation as well. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks.